Okay, hi everybody. My name is Jerry, and I want to welcome you all to the series of the Importance of Working All 12 Steps workshop. And my co-leader today is Karen, and she's in the Boston area, and I'm in Utah. So please help us open the meeting with the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity.
Grant me the serenity.
The things I cannot change, the courage to change
the things I can,
and the
wisdom to know the difference.
Okay. Well, today we're going to be talking about Step 7, and we're going to be referring to the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous and the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions of Overeaters Anonymous, and I believe Karen's going to be quoting from a pamphlet called Working the 12 Steps for you and your sponsor. I'll get us started by telling you a little bit about me. If you were here last month for Step 6, it's the same story. Thank God it hasn't changed. So you can go get a cup of coffee or something. I've been in OA since May 15th, 1993. That's 22 years. And I'm maintaining a 100-plus pound weight loss, which is a first-class miracle because before I came to OA, I couldn't maintain weight for much past the meal I was on. I mean, I've been on some successful diets, but there would always come that day when somebody would talk me into having a bite of just this or that, and I would be gaining that weight back and more. I went over 200 pounds 3 times in my eating career, and when I came, January or so before I came to OA, I was going to the doctor for heart palpitations, and I could hardly walk up steps. I weighed over 250 pounds, and that doctor told me if I didn't start losing some weight, I probably wasn't going to live to see my 50th birthday. I was 43 at the time. And I still couldn't stop. It took me until May of that year, 1993, when a friend introduced me to Overeaters Anonymous, and I finally was able to stop eating like that. I found out through the steps that what was eating me, and I eliminated the reasons I had to eat for emotional purposes. So I don't think food was ever intended to be emotional, but somehow or other we use that. I mean, and I think it's probably okay for normal people to grab a little this or that when they're anxious or something, but for people like me and possibly you, that would be the beginning of another bout of morbid obesity. I'm very healthy. I'll be 66 in 2 weeks, and just yesterday, we're in Utah right now. My husband and I are traveling around the country in a motorhome, and just yesterday we took a bike ride on some trails in Ogden, Utah, and we have 3-wheel recumbent bikes, and we rode bikes for 2.5 hours. It was almost 16 miles, and I never could have done that when I weighed 250 pounds. I mean, things that I loved in my life were eliminated because of my weight. I used to love little fast sports cars, and the sports car I had to trade in on a larger 4-door because I couldn't fit my fat stomach underneath the steering wheel anymore. So now, all those things I lost from the disease of compulsive overeating, I've gotten back today. And the thing that made OA different from all those diets that I did not succeed with is the fact that we have steps. And I did take the steps right away with a sponsor, and it really was the beginning of a new life for me. And last month we talked about Step 6. So this month we want to talk about Step 7. If you listened to the call last month or the podcast, you know that we made a list of our defects in Step 6 and looked at how they used to be assets or, values, character traits instead of defects. And we used them inappropriately to defend ourselves. And then it worked so good, we just kept doing it over and over until they became defects of character instead of assets. So now that we have that list, we're going to ask God to remove these defects of character. I wanted to talk about the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. There's only 2 paragraphs dedicated to steps 6 and 7 in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I found that it wasn't quite that simple, but I love the 7-step prayer, and that can be found on page 76. And it says, "My Creator, I am now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. I pray that you now remove from me every single defect of character that stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. Amen." There's a couple of interesting points in my mind about that prayer. First of all, it's about giving ourselves to God. All of us, all of ourselves, the good and the bad. What that means to me is when I take step 7 and I say that 7-step prayer, I can pretty much be assured that I'm not going to turn into Snow White overnight. I spent a long time perfecting those character defects. You know, they're a part of me by sheer repetition, if nothing else. And so oftentimes when I want to do something, I'll reach for the character defects first instead of the character aspect. But I have to remember another part of that prayer is that we're asking God to remove those defects of character, not ourselves. If you look at page 61 in the Overeaters Anonymous 12-Step and 12 Traditions book, it says that we're trying to be the kind of people God intends us to be. I never thought about that before I came to Overeaters Anonymous. I mean, what I really was more interested in was anything that would benefit me. I never thought about really benefiting other people. I did what some of us like to call people-pleasing, which my sponsor told me it's really another way of saying manipulative martyr. For me it was so, because I only did things for other people when it benefited me. And oftentimes I went against what was in my gut I knew was the wrong thing to do, but if it got you to like me, well, I might do that for you. But that's not the people that God intended me to be. That I was really a self-will run riot. So we're asking God to remove these character defects. I'm not powerful enough to remove them by myself. Now, we're not asking Him to remove them all. We're asking Him only to remove the ones that stand in the way of my usefulness to Him and my fellows. Well, that's pretty interesting, isn't it? So does that mean I'm going to be ending up using those character defects? Well, like I said a little earlier, I'm not going to turn into Snow White, and some of them are going to take a little longer to carve away from my character than others. Like, just take lying, for example. I am a great storyteller, but once when I was a kid, my mom asked me who did that, and I blamed it on one of my other brothers or sisters, which of course was a lie, but I used it to defend myself because I knew if I owned up to it, I was going to get it. And so it worked so good, I tried it again, and it worked again. So I began telling lies prolifically. So I turned that beautiful asset of being a storyteller into being a defective character of being a liar. So sometimes I want to exaggerate, and sometimes I exaggerated and told lies when the truth wouldn't fit. So it's going to take a while for me to remember to stick to my beautiful asset of storytelling when the time is appropriate. And when, I have a lie and I want to tell it, I'm going to have to ask God again to help me not tell that lie. Who could benefit from that? That I get a kick out of, because we're only asking God to take the ones away that stand in the way of our usefulness to Him and our fellows. Now, how could my fellow OA members or even people in my life benefit from a character defect of mine? Well, have you ever been driving down the road and the driver maybe beside you cut you off or something like that? Well, his aggressive defect of character benefits me because I don't want to be like that. So when I get to see someone else do it, it helps me to remember not to do that myself. So I want God to remove those ones that stand in the way of my usefulness to Him and my fellows. the biggest part, I think, to this step, though, is humility. And on that same page, the big book, or in the 12 and 12, page 61, it says that real humility about our character defects carries with it acceptance. And I have to remember that I have 43 years of perfecting those character defects. And I'm abstinent 22 years now, so I only have 22 years abstinent and 22 years of trying to be the person that's helpful to God and my fellows. So I'm better at those defects than I am character access by just repetition, if nothing else. If you look back on our 12-step book again on page 64, it talks about us making mistakes, and it doesn't mean that we are a mistake. This was very valuable to me because when I was growing up, you never owned your mistake. I was brought up with the philosophy that I should know better, and so if I didn't know better, I made it up, you know. But I've learned as a member of OA that I can own my mistakes and ask for help, because I don't know about you guys, but I really relate more to people in their imperfections than I do when they're trying to be perfect. In fact, a very wise sponsor of mine years ago said the synonym for perfect is boring, and that's kind of true. I think life would be so boring without the spice we put in it by our imperfections. When I go to an OA meeting and somebody's sharing about something, how a character defect got them in trouble or something, I relate to that. But if I get in there and I hear somebody say that they took step 7 and all their character defects were wiped away, I would feel like I could never reach that kind of goal. So I'm really glad to know that, you know, it's going to take a while, and maybe when I've been in OA for 43 years, I'll be better at it, you know. So on page 65 in our OA 12 and 12, it talks about how taking the steps helps us to learn about ourselves, why we feel and act the way we do. And after, for me at least, taking step 7, I feel like I have the opportunity to return to those beautiful assets that I was born with before I started misapplying them. So I've been abstinent for 22 years, and I have taken the steps many times, and thank goodness when I do a step 6 and then step 7 nowadays, there's a little less for me to ask God to remove. I love that prayer, though, that 7-step prayer, and it's one of the prayers I do say daily. And it gives me the opportunity then when I do a 10th step to look back and see where I may have misapplied those assets again, and, you know, ask God again to help me to return to those when I fall back on my old ways. So I just want to close it up with page 66. It's the last page on step 7. And I love that last line. It says, our simple prayers humbly spoken are answered in wonderful ways as we open our lives to God's transforming power. And we find that God does for us what we could never do for ourselves. And this step, step 7, is, in my mind, transformative. I have become the kind of person that my dog thinks I am. We went out this morning for a few minutes. We weren't gone very long. And I came home, and I have 2 little dogs, and they both were so excited to see us. You know, it didn't matter if we left them home for an hour or 10 hours. They just were so happy that we were back with them. And I left something out in the car, so I walked back out there and came back, and my dog greeted me again, the same way as when I was gone about an hour. So that's the kind of person I want to be, that forgiving and happy. People are happy to see me. And that has happened for me because of taking the steps, especially steps 6 and 7. After having so many years of being told I should know better, I know today that I don't know better. But when I do fall back in old ways and lean on a character defect, I know that because I've taken this step that I can move forward and do a better job tomorrow. There's always tomorrow, you know. So that's about all I have to say about Step 7. I want to do a couple of announcements before we proceed with Karen. I want to remind you that we're recording the workshop, and it's going to be posted on the OA website podcast page, as well as other podcast feeds like iTunes. If you speak, it's considered implied consent to have your voice and your share recorded and posted. So to preserve your anonymity, please only use your first name or even a fictitious name when you share. And then in accordance with Tradition 6 and 10, please only refer to OA-approved literature when you share. I know you might have found a book out there that helped you do Step 7, but it's not something we want to talk about on this call. And I want you to also remember about 7th tradition. We are self-supporting to our own contributions, and even though this is a virtual meeting, we still have expenses for the website and uploading this podcast. So please use this special workshop meeting number, 82278, when you make your contribution. Just go to the OA website, www.oa.org, and click on Contributions. Or if you want to mail it in, you can send your contributions to the OA World Service Office. And that address is P.O. Box 44020, Rio Rancho, New Mexico, 87174. And thank you very much for helping us carry the message. You know, if you don't have a meeting that you go to regularly and you can't put a 7th tradition in the basket, you know, some virtual meetings ask you to give double at your next face-to-face meeting. You can make a recurring contribution. If you go to the OA.org website and just click on the contribution page, you can see how to do that. I do that myself because with traveling, I don't get to OA meetings as often as I'd like to, so it's a very convenient way to make sure I'm giving back to a fellowship that has done so much for me. So with that, I'm going to introduce you to my dear friend Karen, and she's going to tell you a little bit about herself and then talk about Step 7.
Thank you, Jerry. Can you hear me? Just to make sure I'm off mute completely.
Beautifully, beautifully.
Thank you, Jerry. Hi, my name is Karen, and I'm an abstinent compulsive overeater and food addict. And grateful to be here on it's in New England, a beautiful, sunny, warm Sunday afternoon. I've been in program 23 years, came in January 11th, 1992, and I'm maintaining a 210 plus or minus a few pounds weight loss. I would like to say I've been abstinent for 23 years, but in truth, my abstinence really is 13 years. I went out and did some search and destroy, came back in totally defeated, knowing that this is the only place for me. I have been through the steps many times in the 23 years, and each time it's been different. I have a sponsor. I have sponsees. I do the tools every day to the best of my ability. I do my step work. Thank God the food is in its place, but I don't take it for granted. And for me, we talk about the three-legged stool in program, and it's physical, emotional, and spiritual. My food plan, my sponsor, really helped me in the beginning and through my life in OA with my physical recovery. And that's changed over the years. And so now as I'm getting older, I exercise, not because I want to, but because I have to, because I want to stay as physically fit as I can. My emotional and spiritual recovery have come through the steps, again, with the aid of a sponsor or a formal step study. However I've done it, and I've done it many ways, it is critical for me that I do my step work and my spiritual connection. And as Jerry stated earlier, that I, too, read the 7-step prayer every day. I start my morning out with the prayers in the big book. The fear prayer, which consumed most of my life. So I read the fear prayer, the third step prayer, the seventh step prayer. And then I ask God for guidance and what His will is for me during the day. And at night, I do a 10-step. Usually it's pretty quick, just to say, okay, where did I mess up today? Where can I do better? Where did I rely on me and not on God? So that's my background. And for me, the seventh step, the first time I did it, it was not hard, but it wasn't sincere. I did it because that's what my sponsor told me to do. I had a list. I did, I asked God to remove them. I didn't come into program with that, oh, thank you, God, I'm home and I'm happy and everything is great. I came in very angry. I came in defiant. I came in stubborn. I could go on with the list of defects that I came in with. But those defects served me in my life. I'm a survivor of sorts from not maybe in the truest sense as we think of a survivor now from incest or child abuse or that type of. But I survived an alcoholic home. I survived the abuse as far as name calling and bullying and all of those things that children go through because I was a fat kid. I survived being in a family where it was acceptable to be an alcoholic but not acceptable to be fat. I had coping skills. One of them was food, and that's why I ate. So when I did my first seventh step, it wasn't, I did it. I didn't believe it, but I did it. I've learned over 23 years, and that's the beauty of program. You don't graduate. You get better, hopefully. I believe I'm better than I was 23 years ago. I'm better than I was a year ago. So that when I look at my defects today, when I look back at what my defects were, my character defects, my stubbornness, resistance to change, my unwillingness to listen, to accept, that was my survival. That's how I protected myself. And today, through working multiple 7 steps, I can look at now saying that stubbornness now is my asset. Because today, when I'm faced with a challenge, I ask God for help. I pause. I take time to say all of the negativity that I believe that I can't do something, I'm too stupid, yada, 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 all that negativity that will flood back in on me, fear. I take that time to say, no, I'll just try it again. I may have to walk away from it, but I will come back to it. That stubbornness now is to me an asset because I don't give up on things. I work on a computer 8 hours a day. I'm on multiple spreadsheets and multiple software systems, and every day there's things like there's something new I have to learn and I can't figure it out. But when I pause and ask God for help, and I know that I can persevere and I can get through it, then it's okay. That's an asset to me. My stubbornness is now an asset. I wasn't very acceptable of me and others, and I've learned that. I'm pretty much acceptable of people, places, and things. I may not like them. I may not agree with it, but I do accept that that is their opinion, and it's not mine, and it doesn't have to be mine. When I was growing up, through most of my life, I believe that if I were to be exactly what you wanted me to be at that moment, then you would be happy and I would be happy. And what I learned through program and years of abstinence was that that's not a truth. That is a lie that my disease tells me. that what I am, if I am happy and I am content and I am acceptable of me, then it doesn't matter what other people think. It has not always been easy, but it has been for me the best thing I've ever done, with knowing that I was not put on this earth to please everybody, because it's impossible. Nor was I put on this earth to have other people determine my happiness. That's my responsibility. So through step 7, that's what I've learned, that acceptance, humble is different than humiliation. I suffered a lot of humiliation, but humble is not the same as being humiliated. And that accepting things as they are. I am 69, well, I'm 69 and a half. I'll be 70 in April. I have to accept that age. That age doesn't define me. It's a number. That's acceptance to me. That, you know, the God of my understanding may not be everyone's God of their understanding. My God can be anybody else's God. But I don't determine that. And that whatever or whoever you choose to call higher power, as long as it's not you, it's okay. Would I like everyone to have my spiritual values, my moral values, sure. Wouldn't that be easy? But that's not the way it is. I don't live in a vacuum. I can isolate, and I did that for years, and I lived in fantasy. But today, through step 7, and all the steps, you know, they're written in order for a reason. That's what the essence of step 7 is for me. One, it is humility. Being humble might be defined as accepting things exactly as they are. And it's a bond. It's a connection to my higher power, which I choose to call God. Step 7 is my saying to God, I'm here, I'm flawed, you always knew it, I now accept it. And please, please, humbly, I ask you to remove my shortcomings. That to me is a connection with my higher power. It starts in step 1, 2, and 3. You know, that admitting I'm powerless, turning it over to, you know, this higher power, whichever I choose, and then turning my will and my love over to the care of God, as I understand it. These are written in sequence, and there is a reason. And that, for me, is step 7. I just want to check. I have some notes here, and I want to go back to my references are 12 Steps and 12 Traditions of Overeaters Anonymous, and sponsoring, there's a little pamphlet called Sponsoring Through the 12 Steps. And those are my 2 references today. If there was something that I wanted to, here it is. At the bottom of page 65, repeated practice of step 7 enables us to form a working partnership with our higher power through which we are relieved of the defects which have blocked our effectiveness in the world. A partnership. Wow. Isn't that amazing? That God is in partnership with me. I am in partnership with Him. That means we work together. That means I'm not above everyone else, nor am I the lowest of the low. That I don't have to work harder to be better than you. I just have to be the best of me. And that relieves all of that extra energy that I wasted all those years in trying to be what everybody else wanted me to be. So I think my time is up, and I think that's, I checked my notes. Let me just check one more thing. Well, the last part of step 7 says, our simple prayers, humbly spoken, are answered in wonderful ways as we open our lives to God's transforming power, and we find that God does for us what we could never do for ourselves. I tried many times to diet, many times, created some of my own, did some commercial ones, and I could never do it. And I walked into an OA meeting January 11th, 1992, and they told me I was a compulsive overeater. And these few simple things I had to do, and I would be okay. Didn't believe them. Fought it tooth and nail. I've come to believe and know that this is exactly where I need to be, and to be working the steps in a continuous manner, and to look at step 7 daily. Say the prayer, and when I mess up and I'm not right there, that I come back to it. So thank you very much for letting me take this time on a Sunday afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karen. Like we said, this is step 7. That is part of our series of the importance of working all 12 steps workshop. It was brought to our attention that when there was a survey taken by the region chairs a few years ago, that a lot of people had not taken all the steps, and some even that have been in program a long time. So we just want you to know that when it's time to take step 7, it'll follow step 6, and hopefully when you finish it, you'll be ready to start on step 8. So we're going to open the floor up for questions or sharing, whatever works for you. And we just want to give you a little reminder that the workshop is being recorded, and it's going to be posted on the OA website podcast page. So if you speak, it's considered your implied consent to have your voice and your share recorded and posted. So when you share, use just your first name or even a fictitious name, and in accordance with traditions 6 and 10, just to refer to OA literature when you share. So who would like to kick us off? We have plenty of time. And don't forget, you press star 6 to unmute yourself. And then when you finish sharing, press star 6 again. Does nobody want to share? Let me just double check and make sure. Oh, okay. Someone wants to share?
Hi, Jerry. This is Stephanie. May I share?
Yes, I wish you would.
Hi, this is Stephanie. I'm grateful to be an abstinent compulsive eater. I am so grateful that this series of workshops is about the importance of working all the steps. And for me, it's been the importance of working all the steps repeatedly. I'm in the midst of doing another sort of extensive 4-step, and one of the things that out of that is a realization that one of the things, when I had done the steps in the past, I always had the most trouble with step 3, 7, and 11 because I was large and in charge. And one of the things that's been revealed to me as I'm doing this 4-step is that I have a lot of fear about trusting others, and most specifically God, because this program is really about, for me, letting go of the control of being in charge, of making sure things go the way that I think they're supposed to, or the way that I think will be pleasing to other people. And what I'm seeing as I'm doing this 4-step is that there are reasons from my past that support that, but also to see that it never works. It never worked. All this attempt at control never gave me that sense of well-being or that things are going to be okay that I wanted. And as I'm building this relationship with the God of my understanding, I'm seeing that I'm beginning to have some of those benefits, and I'm being able to let loose sometimes of that desire to control or to manipulate, make sure things are the way that I would like them to be. I love that thing that one of you said about people pleasing. I had heard that people pleasing was control and manipulation to get what you want, but a manipulative martyr, that's just like, oh yeah, that's just really it. So thank you so much for sharing on step 7. I really appreciate it. Thanks again.
Thank you, Stephanie. Now, if you'd like to share, just press *6 to unmute yourself. Or even if you have a question about step 7 or any of the steps, we'd be happy to answer it for you the best we can. Is there anything you'd like to add, Karen?
Jerry, would we want to give them some questions, like a writing assignment?
Yeah, that'd be great. Do you have some questions in mind?
I do. Let me just get my book again. Let me find them. Sorry, I've got to find this. I had them here. There's in step 7, the OA 12 and 12, there are 2 questions. Are we willing to make an investment of time and energy to change our attitudes and actions? And then there's the second one. To what lengths are we willing to go in order to be rid of these shortcomings?
Those are
maybe
great
for someone who's stuck at step 7, maybe those would be helpful.
Thank you, Karen.
I have a few more if you would like them, or we can just hold off on these.
You can share the other questions, Karen.
Okay. These are from the Sponsoring Through the 12 Steps. What does humility mean to me? Can you see that low self-esteem as well as pride is evidence of a lack of humility? Have you struggled to get rid of traits you don't like? Can you accept that some character defects may not be removed immediately? Can you see the necessity of inviting God to remove your shortcomings? Do you believe God can remove your defects? Thank you.
That's great. And Karen, would you repeat what piece of literature those questions come from so people can get those if they want to use them for their
Sure. The first 2 questions came out of the OA 12 and 12. And then, and they were on page 64. And then it's called Working the Program, Sponsoring Through the 12 Steps. It's an Overeaters Anonymous pamphlet, and it works step 1 through 12.
Great. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions about the questions Karen read or anything either of us shared? Or do you have some experience with step 7 you want to share with everyone on the call? Okay. Well, we don't have to run an hour of silence, so we'll go ahead and close here. And I want to remind you all that the opinion...
Hi, I would like to share. It took me a while to figure out. I forgot that I didn't star 1. But anyway, I have worked the steps many a time, and through the big book, through other channels, and even after all these years, I still have a very hard time accepting that I have character defects, accepting them when they show up. And, despite all the changes I've made over the years, I can still get into beating myself up because, when I do something that I know is, character defect showing up, I am more likely to not accept. So, anyway, I'm just wondering if anybody has any, advice on, what one does if they are still beating themselves up for their character defects. So that's my question. That's my sharing question.
Do you want to try to answer that, Karen?
Sure.
Go ahead, Karen.
And I look at they're not. It doesn't say that God's going to remove these and they're never coming back. But for me, acceptance and an opportunity to look and say, okay, God, it's back. Here I am. Okay, what have I done that hasn't worked, and what can I do differently? I do not believe that God's sitting up there saying, Karen, you did it again. God's not saying that. I'm saying it. So I look at it as an opportunity. Okay, my impatience. Oh my! I was a very impatient person. I say was because I had an experience in February where I was traveling, and it ended up I was delayed, continually delayed, trying to fly through many stops, and it was just awful. And when I got home and I walked into my house many hours late, well, I was actually 2.5 days late getting home, I said, God, I will never pray for patience again. Thank you. I have learned my lesson. And I'm a really patient person now. But it has taken many years. So I don't beat myself up, but I ask God to show me, okay, I have another opportunity. Thank you. Another opportunity to learn this. I think God has a really great sense of humor. And he doesn't give up on me. I give up. I turn my back. I don't do that anymore. I still have character defects. They still come up, but I look at it as an opportunity. And I'm a very patient person today.
Thanks, Karen. One of the things I like to remember is that I was not born with character defects. I had only assets because God just makes perfect little babies. And my misuse of those assets to defend myself is what turned them into character defects. And I've done them for a long time. So I have a lot of compassion for myself if I have a situation where I'll lean on a character defect instead of on an asset. And I have to remember that I'm not trying to remove these character defects. God's going to remove them in his time. I'm going to take the best necessary steps I can to be the kind of person that God created me to be. But I have to remember that it's not up to me to get rid of my character defects. So when I get impatient because one seems to, go away and then come back again at a later date, I have to remember that God has a purpose for that. And I'm not a bad girl trying to be good, or I'm not a person that does wrong things trying to do them right. I'm just trying to live life on life's terms and leaving the results up to God. So when I'm trying my very best to, lead a good life and be of maximum service to God and my fellows, then my opportunities to lean on my assets rather than my defects are greatly enhanced. But I'm not perfect, and there's going to be days when somebody's going to tick me off and I'm going to have to be angry or get maybe short with somebody, and those are all just part of who I am and the lovable part of me. All of the things make up who I am, the defects and the assets. So, I try to have a lot of compassion for myself when I go back to using what worked so well for so many years. Thank you. Does anyone else have a question or want to comment on their experience with Step 7? Well, we can close this recording and workshop. I think the appropriate prayer would be the 7th step prayer, and that can be found on page 76 in your AA Big Book. Ready? My Creator, I am now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. I pray that you now remove from me every single defective character that stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. Amen. Okay, everybody, thank you very much for attending our workshop, and it'll be posted on the OA website if you want to tell your friends about it, and they could go listen to it at a later time.
Thank you.